I realized it on a Tuesday morning while brushing my teeth. The mirror was fogged. My reflection was partial. One eye, half a mouth, enough to know it was me. The thought arrived without warning. I am not trapped. I am not confused. I am not afraid. I am compliant. That was the impossible part. Not what was happening, but that I was present for all of it. Clear-headed, functional, still choosing breakfast, still answering messages, still planning the week. Nothing dramatic had happened that morning. No raised voices, no bruises, no ultimatums. Just the knowledge that I had been agreeing to something for a very long time, and that no one had forced me to do it. I stood there longer than necessary. The toothbrush stopped moving. My arm got tired. The taste went flat. How does a person even end up here? I did not always feel this way. That is the lie people expect. That it starts with chaos. That it starts with pain. It did not. It started with calm. When I think back to the beginning, it feels almost dull. A sequence of ordinary moments. A life that made sense. A rhythm that did not require explanation. I had a job that fit me. Not a dream, not a prison, just enough. I woke up at the same time every day. I drank the same coffee. I walked the same route. I liked the predictability. It made me feel adult. I had friends, real ones. We laughed without effort. We complained without bitterness. We planned trips we never took. I was not lonely. That matters, because people like to believe loneliness explains everything. I was not looking to disappear. I was not looking to be saved. Then he arrived, and even that sounds dramatic. He did not arrive. He was already there. A colleague, a presence, someone whose name I already knew, someone whose jokes I already recognized. We spoke about work, then about nothing, then about slightly more than nothing. There was no spark, no moment I could circle on a calendar. What there was instead was ease and a subtle shift in gravity. He listened. That is what I noticed first. Not attentively, not romantically, just consistently. When I spoke, he did not interrupt. When I stopped, he did not rush to fill the space. It felt respectful. It felt safe. I am careful with that word now. Safe. At the time, it meant undemanding. It meant no sudden movements. It meant I did not have to perform. He did not ask me who I wanted to be. He accepted who I appeared to be. That acceptance felt generous. I did not question the cost. We began spending time together. Not deliberately, it just happened. Lunches, walks, shared complaints about minor things. I did not hide it. I did not announce it. There was nothing to explain. If someone had asked me then if anything felt wrong, I would have said no. Honestly, because nothing hurt. That is how it began. With the absence of pain. The changes came quietly. So quietly I cannot list them in order. A comment here, a suggestion there. You could do it this way. That might be easier. You do not need to worry about that. Each one reasonable. Each one framed as help. I accepted them without thought, because they reduced effort, because they simplified choices. I had never been someone who resisted guidance. I mistook that for maturity. When he said he preferred when I wore my hair a certain way, I listened. It was not a demand, it was a preference. When he said my friend was a bad influence, I considered it. He had reasons. They were not irrational. When he said I worked too much, I felt seen. When he said I rested too little, I felt cared for. Nothing was taken. Things were set aside. I still went to work. I still saw people. I still recognized myself in the mirror. But something subtle had changed. My decisions began to arrive pre-filtered. I started anticipating what would be easier, what would avoid discussion, what would keep the tone even. I told myself this was compromise, that adults compromise. No one teaches you how to notice when compromise becomes erosion. The warning signs were gentle. That is why I missed them. A sigh when I disagreed. A pause when I hesitated. A slight withdrawal of warmth. He never raised his voice. He never needed to. The quiet disappointment was enough. I remember the first time I apologized without knowing why. The words came out smoothly, automatically. I am sorry. I did not mean it like that. He accepted the apology. Of course he did. That was the structure. I felt relieved afterward. Relief is a powerful reinforcer. The more I avoided friction, the smoother things felt. The smoother things felt, the more I avoided friction. This did not feel like submission. It felt like efficiency. People imagine control as force, as commands, as visible constraint. This was different. This was optimization. Why struggle when harmony was available? I still had opinions. I just expressed them less often. I still had desires. I just delayed them. I still noticed discomfort. I just told myself it was temporary. I told myself many things. I told myself this is how relationships mature. I told myself passion settles. I told myself stability requires restraint. And sometimes all of that is true. The problem was not what he did. It was what I stopped doing. I stopped checking in with myself. I stopped asking small questions. I stopped noticing my own resistance. Because resistance had become inconvenient. The midpoint did not come with a fight. There was no explosion. It came one evening when I canceled plans with my sister. Again. I was already dressed. I was already out the door. He looked tired. He said nothing. I felt it anyway. The calculation ran in my head. If I leave, there will be distance. If I stay, there will be calm. I texted my sister. Another excuse. She replied with a single word. Okay. I sat back down. The room felt quieter. Not peaceful, quieter. That was the moment something broke. Not dramatically, internally. I felt a hollow satisfaction, the kind that comes from making the expected choice. I realized then that my life had developed a preferred direction, and it was no longer mine. After that, awareness arrived slowly, painfully slowly. I noticed how often I waited, for cues, for approval, for the right moment that never came. I noticed how tired I was, not physically. Decision, tired. I noticed that I could not tell you what I wanted for dinner without first considering what he might prefer. I noticed that my silence had become fluent. I did not confront him. That is important. I did not need to. He was not hiding anything. The truth was visible. I had simply adapted to it. I had allowed myself to become easy. There is a kind of pride in being easy, in being low maintenance, in being agreeable. I wore that pride carefully, like proof of adulthood. When discomfort surfaced, I managed it privately. I reframed, I minimized, I endured. I told myself this was love, or something adjacent. The pain was not sharp, it was dull, chronic. It did not demand action, it demanded patience, and I had learned to be patient. Eventually, even awareness stopped hurting. That was the most frightening stage, when you can see what is happening and no longer react. I functioned. I smiled. I participated. From the outside, everything looked stable. Inside, I had gone quiet. The ending did not arrive as an escape. There was no dramatic leaving. It arrived as acceptance. One day, I understood that this was the life I had selected. Through a series of non-decisions, through silence, through cooperation, without resistance. I did not blame him. There was nothing to blame. I did not absolve myself either. That would have been dishonest. I simply saw the structure clearly. I had traded my agency for ease, my friction for calm, my voice for continuity, and now I lived inside the result. This is not a warning. This is not a lesson. It is an inventory. I wake up. I do what is expected. I move through the day efficiently. Sometimes I remember that morning in the bathroom, The fog, the partial reflection, the knowledge. I am not trapped. I am not confused. I am not afraid. I am still here, still functioning, still choosing, just not loudly, not visibly, not in ways that disrupt the surface. This is what it looks like when nothing explodes, when no one crosses a clear line, when you simply stop resisting. If you stayed until the end, I appreciate you. Like the video and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this.